Hello my friends, welcome to the channel. Fantastic to see you again. Now, if you've already subscribed, guys, thank you. I appreciate the support. If you haven't, I'd be stoked if you did so. I'd also be really super stoked and psyched, as Jamie O'Brien would like to say, if you could chuck down a like for the video. It really helps the algorithms. Now, I've spoken in the past about Ford being one of the most likely car companies in the world alongside Toyota to go bankrupt. And guys, I've done my research on this, so if you're going to make a comment in the comments slandering me because you feel emotional attachment to a particular brand, then to be honest, you just look silly. Because have you done your research? If you have, full respect to you. If you have in fact like us on Facebook, get in contact, tell me why I'm wrong, and guess what? I'll consider making a video based on your research if your research is good. But I'm going to guess that the reason you're angry is because you like Ford, because you don't like hearing reality. And reality is that Ford isn't planning for the future. In fact, Ford, GM, and Dodge all got together last week with their buddy, Joe Biden. Yep, their good mate, Joe Biden, because they pay him, the union pays him lots of money, so Joe Biden's paying them back. Anyway, all got together with him and all said that they're going to produce 50% of their vehicles will be either fuel cell, hybrid, plug-in, or battery electric by 2030. And the other 50% will be petrol and diesel. So, who knows what percentage of those 50% are going to be EVs? Now, you've got to remember this. Remember this in context. BYD has already hit the point in which they can sell their EVs for the same price as they can sell their petrol and diesel vehicles. The cost of their batteries right now is $96 US per kilowatt hour. In other words, BYD have already hit the mark in which people said it wouldn't happen until 2023. So 9 years from now, everyone, well not everyone, but the big players who will matter by then, such as Tesla and BYD and Volkswagen and potentially some others, will be easily able to sell EVs at a lower cost than what Ford can sell petrol and diesel vehicles. Now, only a fool would buy a petrol or diesel vehicle by then. It'll be like buying a Nokia 3410 or analog camera when you can buy a digital camera. It just won't make any sense because it'll cost more to purchase, cost more to run, cost more when you go to sell it at resale time, and nobody wants a petrol or diesel vehicle. There'll be so many reasons that it won't make sense to buy one that I don't know what Ford's going to do when 60% plus of their vehicles are not full EVs. 60% plus of their vehicles are not wanted by the market. Now add to this Ford Motors balance sheet. Let's have a look at the details. Now, Ford is in a precarious position right now in terms of repaying their debt. Many of their loans, they have to repay at a rate of 10% because their debt is considered low quality debt. It's considered likely that they will default, therefore their loan rates are higher than other companies. For example, many companies in China have loan rates of 0%. Zero. Other companies worldwide have rates between 2 to 5%. On some of Ford's loans, they pay 10%. That is a really big problem to be in. Now, consider the fact that Ford needs to basically transition all of their factories at some point over the next decade, all of them, to being able to produce hybrid vehicles or EVs. All of them. If they want to compete in 2030, that's what they have to do. All of them have to be changed to being EV factories where they don't build traditional vehicles. Now that's a big change. Their machinery, their robots have to be changed. They need to find the battery supply. There's an enormous amount of work Ford need to do, and that's going to cost billions of dollars. And Ford have committed to spending billions of dollars. I don't know where they're going to get these billions of dollars. GM have done the same thing. Dodge have done the same thing. All these car companies, have Volkswagen, everyone's committed to spending billions of dollars to transition to EV. Now, where Ford is going to get this extra money on top of their current debt obligations is the big question. If you can answer me that question, you're a wizard. Now, Warren Buffett famously said, volatility is far from synonymous with risk. When we think about how risky a company is, we always like to look at its use of debt, since debt overload can lead to ruin. Now, Ford Motor Company does have debt on its balance sheet, but is this debt a concern to shareholders? Well, I would say yes, it is. In fact, I would say it's dangerous debt. Debt is a tool that can help a business grow. So personally, I quite like debt. If the bank would give me more money, put me in a position to have more debt, I would take it in an instant. Because debt can create value. But in the case of Ford, can they meet their obligations? Well, if a business is incapable of paying off its lenders, then it exists at their mercy. In the worst case scenario, a company can go bankrupt if it cannot pay its creditors. However, a more frequent but still costly occurrence is where a company must issue shares at bargain basement prices, permanently diluting shareholders just to shore up its balance sheet. This has many knock-on, flow-on negative effects. Having said that, the most common situation is where a company manages its debt reasonably well and to its own advantage. When we examine debt levels, we first consider both cash and debt levels together. How much debt does Ford carry? Now, as you can see, Ford had $152.7 billion US dollars of debt as of March 2021, down from $167.3 billion a year earlier. However, because it has a cash reserve of US $31 billion, its net debt is less, at around $124 billion. Now let's look at Ford Motor's liabilities. Well, zooming in on the latest balance sheet data, we can see that Ford Motor had liabilities of $94.2 billion within 12 months and liabilities of $132.6 billion due beyond that. Offsetting these obligations, it had cash of $31 billion, as well as receivables of US $3.97 billion due within 12 months. So its liabilities total are US $191.6 billion, more than the combination of its cash and short-term receivables. The deficiency here weighs heavily on the US $55 billion the company itself has. Now imagine as if a child was struggling under the weight of an enormous backpack full of books, his sports gear, and a trumpet. If you saw that, we'd watch its balance sheet closely, without a doubt. Now, in the finance world, we use two main ratios to inform us about debt levels relative to earnings. The first is net debt divided by earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. That's called EBITDA, EBITDA. While the second is how many times its earnings before interest and tax, EBIT, covers its interest expenses, or its interest cover for short. The advantage of this approach is that we take into account both the absolute quantum of debt with net debt to EBITDA and the actual interest expenses associated with that debt with its interest cover ratio. Now, Ford Motor shareholders face the double whammy of a high net debt to EBITDA ratio of 14.4 and fairly weak interest coverage, since EBIT is just 0.96 times the interest expense. The debt burden here is substantial. However, it should be some comfort to shareholders to recall that Ford Motor actually grew its EBIT by a hefty 492% over the past 12 months. Now, if that earnings trend continues, it will make its debt load much more manageable in the future. However, remember, Ford is in the process of being disrupted by electric vehicles. It is not the disruptor, it is being disrupted. So, it's in a precarious situation. Getting back to debt. Now, there's no doubt that we learn most about debt from the balance sheet, but ultimately the future profitability of the business will decide if Ford Motor can strengthen its balance sheet over time. So if you're focused on the future, make sure you subscribe to this channel and I'll keep you updated on what's going on with companies like Ford, GM, Tesla, etc. Now, because a company cannot pay debt with paper profits, it needs cold hard cash. So it's worth checking out how much of that EBIT is backed by free cash flow. Over the last 3 years, Ford Motor Company actually produced more free cash flow than EBIT. And there's nothing better than incoming cash when it comes to staying in your lender's good graces. So that's a good thing. However, Ford Motor Company's interest cover and its track record of staying on top of its total liabilities makes me extremely uncomfortable with its debt levels. In addition to the fact it's being disrupted currently, it's not the disruptor, and it's not planning for a future of electric vehicles, it's planning a token effort. Makes me extremely concerned. But at least it's pretty decent at converting EBIT to cash flow. That's encouraging. Once we consider all the above factors together though, it seems to me that Ford Motor's debt is making it very risky. Some people like that sort of risk, but personally I'm mindful of the potential pitfalls. So I'd prefer that they carried a lot less debt at a point in history when the entire automotive industry is about to transition from the old to the new. Ultimately, every company can contain risks that exist outside of the balance sheet. And for Ford, those include the fact that right now, it's in a position of weakness. Both, like I said, on its balance sheet, and also by the fact that it isn't properly preparing for an electric future. Thanks for watching the video. I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Bye bye.